This is Gabriela on the scene today with Talk Network Radio. We have a real treat for you just around the corner, and that is Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. Jeff is the owner of Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and he will be coming to you weekly to teach you more about empowered living.
Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm glad to be with you this afternoon. I'm Jeff Byrd with Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and this is Empowered Living. Now, if you're like me, boy, well, what a season we're having. And maybe you, like me, at different times have tried to do a physical detox, a detoxification. Like I've done juicing for up to several weeks before, just not eating any food, just to let my body kind of detox. I've some days I don't eat. I just drink water just to let my body detox. And wow, I feel like in these days I need for my soul to detox, if you know what I mean. It's like there's so many things coming in. It's been so many difficulties, so many issues, so much bad news, so much really difficult stuff from in the media, on the personal side of things, on Facebook, so many losses. It's just a tough time. And if you're like me, if you're a person of prayer, boy, my list of people and just friends, just immediate acquaintances, not to mention the big national things and international things, boy, that list is getting longer and longer and longer and longer. As there's so many things that need help and need some detoxing. So many people that need some resolution and some detox. And so what I wanted to do today is I don't want to talk about anything else difficult or negative. What I want to do is the title of today's show is called Speak Joy. Speak Joy. And I want to focus on the joyful. And that may seem like a silly thing to do in the middle of all this, but I know this, that what I focus on is what I become like, right? We become what we behold. And if all we've got is the news, we're going to become discouraged and downtrodden and hopeless and negative, and we're going to talk about those things all day long. And the more we talk about them, the more we emphasize them, the stronger they get. But what I want to do is talk about joy and think about joy. Because the more we emphasize joy, the more we talk about joyful things, the more we share joyful things. Joy is meant to be shared, right? You know that. You know that. Joy is meant to be shared. If you have a joyful experience or go share a joyful time with somebody and make some joyful memories, those things are meant to be shared. So I want to talk about that. And the first thing I want to share a personal story. And my wife, Angie, and I, when we first met, we spent a lot of time doing joyful things, just traveling around, hunting, chasing down rare birds, going and visiting parks. And every weekend, because we were traveling back between where she was living up near Charlottesville, Virginia, and Norfolk, Virginia, where I was, we were going back and forth, and we were just finding cool things. And so, it's like a couple of times a month we had a new place, a new experience. And it was just joyful. And I love looking back on those things. And thankfully Facebook pops up those memories sometimes. And like today, a trip that we took to Highland County up in Virginia, and it was beautiful, beautiful scenery. And just looking at those pictures and thinking about those memories and being together and our experience and the birds and the nature and all, that was joyful. And just having that pop up, those images pop up in front of me and dwelling on those, that brought new joy. Now, as you might suspect, life sets in. And we can't run and play as much as we used to when we first met each other. There's a lot of other things that have to be done. And especially with COVID and with jobs and finances and all, there's a lot more difficulties. And sometimes it can get pretty tense. But what I've found, one of the things we've been doing this summer, or this spring so far, is gardening. And we love that. And if we just stop and go out, we call it a walk around. We go and walk around the yard and just look at the new growth, the new things that are growing, the flowers, the bulbs that we planted. We just had our stargazer lily open today. We planted those bulbs back several months ago. But watching new things come up, finding something, even if it's a little thing like planting a plant or a bulb or an herb in the yard, and then sharing that thing together. The beautiful thing that's not focused on the stressful, not focused on the difficulties, something that gets us out of that that gives us a joyful time together, that's very valuable. Sharing, if we were all together, one of the things I would ask, I would put out a question and we'd have small group discussion, and I would say, what is one of the most joyous experiences and times you've ever had in your life? Tell about it. Let's let each other hear about some good stuff, right? Then that's one way immediately. You can do that with your around your dinner table tonight if you have one, and if your family meets for dinner, or in discussion with your friends if you get together, or somebody you talk to. Ask that question. Get them thinking about it, because when you ask that question, people have to think about it. Well, wow, what was one of the most joyous times I've had? And immediately they're out of their current mental space and they're on the things that brought them joy. It's a good way to help people. And even to meditate on those things. You might want to take 10 minutes and just spend some time breathing deeply and just thinking on the most joyful experiences that you've had in your life, and the things you're looking forward to too, the joy that you hope is in front of you, the things you're shooting for, but sharing that joy. So that's kind of on the personal level. Now, I also want to talk about it on the spiritual level. As I was thinking about joy in preparation for the podcast today, I remembered that there was a verse somewhere in the Bible that said, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." So I looked it up. It's found in Nehemiah 8:10. And it said, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." And I thought, well, what in the world does that mean? We could use some strength right about now. A lot of us, like when I met Chuck, the producer today, he said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm tired." Because I'm just, even when I've slept enough, I just wake up feeling weary because so much that's going on in the world and around us and things. So many difficult things to think about. So I just feel weary. But so I said, well, strength would be nice right now. Some new strength and new dynamic, right? And new vigor. And so I looked at that and I thought, well, what if the joy of the Lord is my strength? Well, what on earth is the joy of the Lord? I mean, that sounds like something you talk about in church that has no bearing in real, practical, everyday life, right? It just sounds like a nice thing to say. So I thought, well, what is the joy of the Lord? And it's almost as soon as I asked that question, another verse popped into mind. And it's from Hebrews 12:2. And it's talking about Jesus. And it said that for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Okay? So he went through the worst thing we can imagine. Horrible things happen to people, and there's not one of us who are without fault in some way or another, but Jesus was utterly without fault. He spent his entire life reaching out to people in love, giving them the truth, whether they would take it or not, but doing what would help get them free if they would receive it. And it says that it led him to the cross. People were threatened by that. The religious people were threatened, and they hated him because of that. But it says that for the joy set before him. So I asked this question. I thought, well, what was the joy set before him, right? If it was because of the joy set before him, that caused him to endure the cross, it must have been pretty significant. So, well, what is the joy? What was the joy that was set before Jesus? You know what? You and me are the joy that was set before Jesus. Coming home and being with him again and everything being made right is the joy that was set before Jesus. He knew that when he paid that ultimate price and was crucified on that cross, that it was going to wipe out everything that you and I and all of humanity has ever done wrong. God the Father would look on that and go, wow, that is the just payment for every wrong that's ever been done. Sometimes it's easier to think about other people's wrongs than our own wrongs, but it covered it all. And he says, now for every one of it, for you, for me, he says, that's my kid. They're back home. We may know we've got all kinds of issues, but he looks at us and he goes, wow, I see you as absolutely perfect. I saw everything wrong about you on Jesus on the cross. And now I see you absolutely perfect. My arms are wide open. I'm running like the father of the prodigal son. When that son started coming home, and because he thought all of this great fulfillment was out in the world, and he went out and spent all his money, and all his friends left, and he ended up feeding pigs. And then he realized, oh, wow, boy, I had it made with my father. I had it made with him. That's where the love was. That's where the resource was. That's where the provision was. And he turned back. And he started going back towards his father's house. He was going to ask him to take him on as a servant because he wasn't worthy to be his son. But when his father saw him off on the distance, he ran to him. That was a thing that Jewish men didn't do. If you ran to somebody, it wasn't cool to express that kind of emotion. You were supposed to be stoic and stable and, and let them run to you. But he saw that son and he loved him so much. He takes off running, calls for the robe, the clean robe to be brought to him, and the sandals, which only the members of the family wore, and the signet ring. He said, it's my joy to restore you. And Jesus knew that he was the doorkeeper, right? He was the doorkeeper to let all of us come back into the Father's house. He paid the price. He took away all the wrong, got rid of all that stuff we could never have dealt with on our own. He dealt with it, and he's like, come on home. Come on. That's my joy. Sit down. Come into the feast. We're going to laugh. We're going to have music. We're going to fire up the band and the smoker, and we're going to kill the fatted calf, and we're going to have a celebration. It's going to be a good time. And there's a beautiful verse over in the Song of Solomon that says, he brought me to his banqueting table. His banner over me was love. And that's exactly what he wants to do. That was the joy. That is the joy that Jesus suffered all that he suffered for us, to say, come on home. Come on home. The Father's banner over you is love. Come on to the banqueting table and have a seat. There's a verse in that same passage, another verse that talks about joy. And Jesus is saying, he said, there's more joy in the presence of the angels over one sinner who repents than over the many who are righteous. And I've heard that misquoted a lot, and they say, oh, well, the angels have joy. No, that's not what it says. It says there's more joy. Somebody pointed this out to me. There's more joy in the presence of the angels. Well, whose joy is it? It's the Father's joy. It's the joy of the Father. The Father, when one person is like, oh, this is going to fulfill me, and this is going to fulfill me, and all these things we run after, and all the things we do to try to get ahead, and all of the misplaced confidence and trust, and then one of us turns back to him and goes, oh my, we look at Jesus and we go, wow, look at that love that I've never known before. Look at that love, and look at what it's done, and look at the joy when one person turns back to him and goes, oh my, you're the one who's loved me for forever, not the other people that I've chased down. You're the one who provides for me, not all of my plots and schemes and things. You're the one who has great wave after wave of grace towards me. You're not like me and my impatience and my frustration and my short words and my attitudes. And wow, you got it for me. And when that happened, when one of us realized that and go, okay, yes, please, come in. I trust you. I'm looking to you. You do what I can't do, and you fix my life. You make all these things work out that I couldn't figure out on my own. He says there's more joy in the presence of the angels. The angels are watching that, and the Father's just beaming and radiant with joy and going, oh, come home. I'm so glad. I'm running to you. I'm clothed. I'm bringing out the best. Bringing out the best. So may he give us eyes to see that. So I want to give a couple of tips on that, both personal and the spiritual joy. And the first one is to just focus on joy bringing things and share them. Share what brings you joy. It can be as simple as a flower in the garden. It can be as profound as Christ's love for you and the sacrifice he made, and the Father's joy. It can be, but focus on joyful things, big or small. Focus on those. Meditate on them. Get them in your minds. And please turn off the TV. Please turn it off. Please turn off the news. Anyways, put on a gardening show or something. But turn off the news for a little while. Not to be ignorant, but to catch your breath and to be healed. Right? Because we need it to detox a bit. And then the second thing on the spiritual side is a focus on what brings God joy. I bring him joy. You bring him joy. We bring him more joy than we could possibly understand. And when we look at Christ and realize he took everything out of the way that could ever be between us. Some of us, and I've done this for many years, we think about God and we think, oh my goodness, he's just fault finding, he's condemning. Oh, I did that. That's not how he's looking at it. That's wrong. He's looking at it and going, wow, I took that away. That was a couple of thousand years ago on the cross outside Jerusalem. I took it away. Jesus took it away. He took it away. I'm never going to think of it again. I'm never